All right, we are doing an extension of 3.2. An extension is something that you really don't need to know this year. However, it's going to lead into what you're going to do in 7th grade, which is going to be your algebra class. We're going to do an extension, though, on 3.2 called factoring expressions. Now, before we do anything else, let's go over what a factor is. You should know that, for example, if I gave you 10, factors of 10 would be 1, 2, 5, and 10. They are numbers that divide into 10. Now, you should also know that if I gave you this, let's say I gave you 20 and 15. If you were asked to find the GCF, what does GCF stand for? Right, greatest common factor. What is the greatest common factor of 20 and 15? Hopefully you thought it was 5. Now, how you did that in the past is you probably made a factor tree. And two numbers that are factors of 20 could be 10 and 2. When it was prime, you circled it. So this would be 5 and 2. If you broke down 15, that gave you 5 times 3. And what factor do they have in common? They both have a 5. Therefore, your GCF was 5. Now, that's review. You've done that before. You can also factor an expression. What that means is you're going to write an expression as a product of factors. For example, rather than writing 10, like 5 times 2, you can take something like this. 5x plus 10 equals 5 times x plus 2. Notice the same idea. Two expressions multiplied together to give you a simplified expression. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times x plus 2 is 5x plus 10. This is called factoring an expression. You can write the expression as a product of factors, and you can use the distributive property to factor them. Now, I kind of call this kind of a cheating way here to undistribute. Instead of multiplying something into an expression, you're going to divide a common factor out of the expression. So let's do an example. If I gave you 5x plus 10, what is the greatest common factor of both terms? You have a 5x, you have a 10. What is the greatest common factor of 5 and 10? It'd be 5. So now you're going to undistribute the 5. Take the 5 and divide both terms by 5. Well, 5x divided by 5 gives us 1x, or just x, plus, and then 10 divided by 5 gives us 2. So this would be 5 times the sum of x plus 2. If you want to check your answer, you can just distribute 5 times x, 5 times 2. If you distribute this, you will get 5x plus 10. So let's try some examples of this. The first example, 24x minus 18. Now 24x minus 18. What is the common factor, a greatest common factor, of 24 and 18? Now, 2 obviously would go in the 24 and 18. 4 goes into 24, but it doesn't go into 18. What is the biggest number? Now you could pick 2 or you could pick 3, but that's not the biggest factor. So what is the greatest common factor? It's 6. So we can distribute a 6 into an expression, or what I say is undistribute it. So if you undistribute it, 24x divided by 6, that gives us 4x, and 18 divided by 6, or negative 18 divided by 6, is negative 3. So it would be 6 times 4x minus 3. Let's try another one. Let's do 2x plus 8y minus 6. Now we have three terms. What's the greatest common factor that goes into all three terms? 2x, 8y, and then a negative 6. The greatest common factor would be 2. So you're going to divide out of 2 out of all three of those terms. So 2x divided by 2 gives us 1x. 8y divided by 2 gives us 4y. Negative 6 divided by 2 gives us negative 3. So the answer would be 2 times the quantity x plus 4y minus 3. Now we're going to factor out a fraction. So let's do an example involving a fraction. Let's do 1/2 x plus 3/2. Now when you do a fraction, here's what you're going to do. You're going to factor out the coefficient of the variable. So if you want to write that down, you can. Factor out the coefficient of the variable. Now here, the coefficient of the variable is 1/2. That's the number in front of the letter. So we're going to factor out a 1/2. So what's 1/2 x divided by a half? Well, a half divided by a half is just 1x. What's 3/2 divided by a half? Now, once again, you need to know this. You have to be perfect on cue with all of your basic math facts involving fractions. 3/2 divided by 1/2. Multiply by the reciprocal. That gives you 3. So it would be 1/2 times, in parentheses, x plus 3. And once again, if you wanted to check it, 1/2 times x gives us 1/2 x. And 1/2 times 3 gives us 3/2. So my answer would be this. B, let's try another one. 1/5 y minus 4/5. What would you factor out? It'd be a 1/5. Why is that? Because it's the coefficient. So now factor out a 1/5, that would give us y minus 4. If you divided both these terms by 1/5, you would get 1y minus 4. And there's my answer. Now, in example number 3, we're going to factor out a negative. When we factor out a negative, it's because the first term is negative. So let's just write down example A, and we will write down negative 4p plus 10. So let's first just look at this and say, what is our common factor? What is our greatest common factor? What number goes into 4 and 10? It's 2. We know that. Now, here's how you know it's negative. If this leading coefficient, if the coefficient of the variable is negative, you're going to take out a negative. So because the 4 is negative, you're going to take out a negative 2. So when you divide by a negative, all your signs change. So you have to think to yourself, what times negative 2 would give me negative 4p? What times negative 2 gives me negative 4p? Well, that would be positive 2p. Because negative 4 divided by negative 2 is 2, and the p comes down. What is 10 divided by negative 2? It'd be negative 5. Notice that the negative right here became a positive, and the positive right here became a negative. When we divide by a negative, the signs change. And once again, you are more than welcome to distribute this and double check your answer. So my answer would be negative 2 times the quantity 2p minus 5. Let's try another one. Negative 15x minus 30. Now, what would you factor out here? What would you factor out of both of these terms? Well, because the first term is negative, we have to factor out a negative. What is the greatest common factor of 15 and 30? It's 15. So if you take negative 15x divided by negative 15, that's going to give you positive 1x. Negative 30 divided by negative 15 gives you positive 2. So my answer would be negative 15 times x plus 2. Our last example is C. Negative 1/3 p plus 2/6. What would you factor out here? You'd factor out a negative, and because the fraction is right here, 1/3, we're going to factor out a negative 1/3. So if we take negative 1/3 p divided by negative 1/3, that just gives us 1p. A positive divided by a negative is going to give us a negative. The sign changes. And then we have to take 2/6 divided by 1/3. Well, I have to take 2/6 times the reciprocal, which is 3/1. This simplifies. And so that would give me 2 divided by 2, which is just 1, because 2/6 divided by negative 1/3, that's 1. So because it's minus, it's going to be minus 1. So 2/6 is 1/3. So we actually would take 1/3 divided by negative 1/3, which is negative 1. So my answer would be negative 1/3 times the difference of p and 1. Or you could read it as negative 1/3 times the quantity p minus 1. You cannot say negative 1/3 times p, because you're not taking this times p, you're taking it times p minus 1, the entire thing.